Hey guys, this video is for you if you are trying to figure out what you want to do next in your career. And I'm going to tell you what the problem is that you're facing, what you think the solution is, and then what the solution actually is. So the problem that you're facing is you're confused. You're not sure what you want to do next. And whether you're thinking about starting a new business or starting a new venture, or whether you're just trying to figure out what kind of next job you want to do next, either way, you're lacking in confidence, in clarity, and in conviction on what is that next thing that you should focus all your efforts towards making happen. Now, here's what people tend to think the solution is. People are like, I just need to figure out what that next step is. Just as soon as I can figure out, as soon as I can solve the equation, and I just know, oh, this is the kind of job I'm looking for. It's this function and it's this industry and it's this type of company. Or this is the kind of new venture that I want to start. It's going to be this kind of problem and like this targeting this kind of market. It's going to be this kind of product. They're like, if I can just figure out what that next thing is, that's it. Bam. Problem solved. I just need clarity, confidence, conviction, and then I just have to go out there and make it happen. That will solve my problem. That is not really the solution. I'm here to tell you that that part is important. You do have to figure out what you want to do next, and that is where your work begins. It is not where your work ends. So step one is figuring out what you want to do next. And the way I like to have people think about this is in terms of problem, solution, and then you as the person to deliver that solution. And you need to develop clarity and conviction on the problem that you solve and it being a high priority problem, a problem with a lot of demand. People really want to solve this problem. Then the solution that you offer for you to feel like, oh yeah, the solution I offer is awesome. It's great. It solves this problem really freaking well. And then finally, for you to have confidence in, I am the best person to deliver this solution. Let me give you some examples of what I mean. I'll even give coaching as an example, right? The problem is, in my understanding, and this is my thesis, a lot of high stress, high achievers, a lot of stressed out overachievers like me have gotten all the things they want. They've racked up a lot of achievements, but they're still not happy. And it is a high priority problem. They want to be happy. The solution, in my mind, is coaching. It is learning this toolkit, this framework that's here on the side. It's understanding that circumstances are neutral, that all your feelings are being caused by your thoughts, and then your actions are being driven by your feelings and your results are created from those actions. And if you want to have different feelings, different actions, different results, you need to learn the skill of changing your thoughts, of being aware of what they are today and changing them over to more helpful thoughts. That's the solution. And then me as the person to deliver that solution, I have a thesis. I think I'm a good coach. I think I'm a good person to deliver the solution of coaching. I've used a lot of coaching in my life. I am very familiar with this toolkit, and it's a good fit for like my skill set. I like advisory work. I like communicating. I like people. I like talking. I like words. It's a really good fit for my skill set and my interests. So that's what I mean when I say develop a thesis, problem, solution, and you as the person to deliver the solution. Let me give another example that's like not related to coaching at all. You could imagine, for example, companies have a problem. I'm making this up as I go. Companies have a problem where their legal department doesn't do a good job of communicating with the business department, right? Legal is like too in the weeds, they're too sort of inflexible, and then business like doesn't understand how to use legal in an efficient way, in an appropriate way, and this opens them up to business risk, right? And that is a high priority problem in certain industries. There are certain industries where it's really important to have your legal sort of I's dotted and T's crossed, but it works inefficiently today, so there's a lot of demand to make that more efficient. And then you can say the solution is you need somebody to play in a translator role. You need somebody to bridge the gap, somebody who understands the legal side and also understands the business side. Maybe they have experience in both, or they just kind of understand how both sides think. And they're very good at translating between the two and thinking about like, how do the groups communicate better? What are structures that will help them communicate better? What are processes? That person playing a translator role is really important. And then you could say, I am the best person to fulfill that role. Because again, making this up, I went to law school. I worked in legal for a while. I'm very familiar with that. I also worked as a product manager for a while. So I really understand like the business side and the business sort of way of thinking about things. I love communication. I love thinking about processes. I love thinking about organizational structures. Throw me in there and I guarantee in a year's time, you'll have a legal and business relationship that is so beautiful, so efficient, and generates tons of value. So that's what I mean. And that is step one, right, of gaining clarity, confidence, and conviction, is to really think about problem, solution, and you as the person to deliver that solution. and taking the time to kind of make that little triangle as strong as possible. Take your time, be thoughtful, be strategic, gather the data, do experiments, take as much time as you need to really develop, okay, this is the thesis. This is the thesis of what I'm going to do next. And I have a lot of conviction in it because I've really solidified this is a high priority problem with a lot of demand for people wanting to solve it. This is an excellent solution for that problem. And dang, I am so good at delivering that solution. So work all that out, take your time to do that. That's one of the things I help my clients do, by the way, in a structured way, so they can really figure out what kind of life am I trying to lead? What skills do I really like flexing? What's the stuff I'm good at and I enjoy? And then how can I shape that so that it serves a high priority problem and delivers a really effective solution to that problem? That's something I do with my clients. Now, once you've done that, like I told you, this is the beginning of the work. This is not the end of the work. Because once you have that triangle really solid, right? Problem, solution, and you as the person to deliver the solution, now you got to start doing it, right? Whether if it's starting a new venture, you have to actually start the venture and start trying to get customers and start kind of trying to get things off the ground. Or if it's a role that you're getting at a company, you have to start recruiting and you have to start talking to people and interviewing. And here's what's going to happen. Either pathway, you're going to get started recruiting or building your new venture, and you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into obstacles. People will say no to you. People will tell you that's a stupid idea. They'll be like, I don't really get it. Your marketing campaign won't work. Customers will say no to you. You will run into rejection, dings, problems, and obstacles. And here's what's going to happen. When you run into an obstacle, right? Maybe the very first one, maybe it's the fifth one. I'm going to tell you right now, chances are high, you will feel really strongly, I need to change my thesis. My thesis is wrong. I'm wrong about the problem and the solution and me as the person to deliver it. So I need to change that triangle around. I need to change something because I'm getting feedback from the market that this wasn't the right kind of thesis to go forward with. And that's probably going to happen with way too few data points for you to actually make a strategic decision about that. Because it'll probably happen like the first time that you get a ding, or maybe like the third time, or the fifth time you get a ding. Not a meaningful sample size. Really, really small numbers, but chances are very high. And this happened to me too. That's why I'm telling you, those first few initial rejections, those first few obstacles you run into, your brain will be screaming at you, our thesis is wrong, let's change it, let's just change it and do something else. But the problem with doing that is if you just change your thesis, change your little triangle, every single time you run into a problem, you're just going to be tinkering with that thing forever. You will just get whiplashed around with all of the random feedback you get. And like every day, every week, every month, you're going to be starting from step one with a brand new thesis. And that's how you go around in circles and don't make any progress. So here's the real thing you have to do. Here's the real solution. Once you've developed your thesis and you've been thoughtful and strategic and gathered data and done the experiments and you've decided this is the problem and solution that I am going to move forward with, then you have to get started, start getting the obstacles, the dings, the rejections, all of that stuff. And every single time you get a rejection or you run into a problem, here's what you need to do. You need to go back to your thesis and reinforce it. You need to say, okay, I'll give an example as a coach, right? If I talk to someone and they're like, oh my gosh, I think coaching is terrible. I just think this is the worst product in the world. It would never help me, right? Rather than being like, oh my God, let me stop being a coach. I must have a terrible product. I need to go back to my own thesis and be like, hang on, why did I think this was a good product in the first place? What are my counter arguments to their objections? And I don't need to go convince them, right? I'm not having a conversation with them. I'm having a conversation with me. The audience here is my own brain. And I need to make sure I address line by line anything that they told me that kind of resonated, right? That I was like, oh crap, I might agree. I need to go in there and reinforce and be like, no. I thought about this strategically. I put time into developing this thesis. This is an opportunity for me to reinforce and shore up my confidence, my conviction, my certainty in this thesis. I need to get back into clarity and confidence about what the heck I'm doing and the direction I've chosen. That is step one. You have to do that first. You're not allowed to do anything else until you do that. So that's step one. Once I have recentered and reinforced my thesis, my little triangle, then I can problem solve. And this is how I suggest people problem solve. It's 3 steps. Step 1, are you talking to the right people? Step 2, is your message as clear and compelling as possible, assuming you're talking to the right people? And step 3, assuming you have a clear, compelling message and you're talking to the right people, have you gotten enough points of exposure within your market? Those are the 3 things you need to problem solve after you have solidified your little thesis triangle. So let's say someone is telling me, oh my gosh, coaching is the worst product ever. And I've gone in and I've said, no, hang on. Why do I think coaching is awesome? Let me like reinforce my confidence. Let me get back to that centered place of like, yes, I love what I'm doing. I love this thesis. Then I can start to problem solve and say, hey, was I talking to the wrong customer? Was I talking to someone who's actually not a good customer of coaching? Maybe I'm hanging out in the wrong places. Maybe I'm having the conversations I want to have in the wrong spots. Where do my customers hang out? Where are they? Let me go find them and talk to them instead of talking to this person who's just not a good fit for what I have to offer, right? And the same thing happens, same thing applies whether you're starting your own venture that's a totally different product or whether you're recruiting for a job, right? If you're trying to pitch someone on this like legal to business connector role idea and they tell you, oh my God, that's horrible, and we don't need that, like that's totally irrelevant. You can say, okay, well, no, I still think it's a good idea, but maybe I'm talking to the wrong person in the sense that, oh, it's not as relevant in this particular industry. So I'm just going to go find a different industry where it's a high priority problem for them and they're going to resonate with my message more. So that's step one. Am I talking to the right people? Then step two, right? If I'm like, no, I am talking to the right people, but how can I make my message more compelling? Maybe I'm not expressing it in the right way, in the way that resonates the most with them. And what are they telling me? Like, what am I hearing back from them that I now need to address, right? Misunderstandings that are happening or further questions they have that I didn't anticipate that I need to like have responses to. That's kind of the next step that you can do once you've ensured you're talking to the right people. And then the third step, you're talking to the right people, you feel really good about your message, you've tested it, you know that it resonates, you hear the feedback back that it resonates, then points of exposure, plain old points of exposure. And what I mean by this is, let's say you are like seeing ads on the internet for like a purse. And I'm this way too. I might want to buy a new purse. I probably have to see that ad like 70 times before I'm going to go ahead and actually like click the link and buy a purse. It's not because I don't want to buy a purse. It's not because the message isn't compelling and it's a beautiful ad. You just have to like keep showing it to me until I finally like get out of my inertia and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, sure. I guess I'll like buy that purse. And it's the same way with customers and it's the same way when you're going through recruiting. When you nail down, this is the right group of people to talk to, and this is the right, most compelling way for me to talk about my message, you can be doing everything right and you just haven't gotten enough points of exposure. And nothing's going wrong. And all you have to do is just keep going out there and keep talking to your people and saying your message again and again and again until you kind of cross that threshold and people are sort of get out of inertia, are moved into action and hire you or buy your product, whatever it is that you're doing. So that is what you really need to do. Once you've decided what you want to do, which is still an important part of the process, the real work begins, because then as you run into dings, rejections, obstacles, problems, all of those things, what you need to do is not change your thesis, not change problem solution, you as the person to deliver the solution, that thing that you decided to do. Don't change it. Reinforce your confidence in it, come back to the reasons that you had for why you chose to do this, make them even stronger, add new arguments to the thesis, and then from a place of certainty, problem solve. Are you talking to the right people? Is your message the right message? Is it compelling? Is it addressing the stuff that's on their mind? And have you gotten enough points of exposure in the market to cross the threshold and kind of inspire someone else to action? This is exactly what I help my clients do. So if you're in a situation where you know that you don't want to stay in your current job or career situation that much longer, and you're like, I have to figure out what's next. I can't just jump and leave until I figure out what's next. But figuring out what's next is having you spin in confusion, where you're like, ooh, one day you're like, I'll do this. Then you kind of start making some progress. Then you like run into some obstacles. You're like, maybe that's wrong. And then you like start again towards something else and you make some progress. And then, oh, like that doesn't seem like it'll work either. And you find yourself staying stuck or going in circles. It is time to bring in a coach. The thing I always tell people is if you're stuck for more than 7 days, hire a coach, because that's the longest you'll be stuck when you have a coach, because we coach every single week. And so guaranteed 7 days is the maximum amount of time that you'll be stuck. So come talk to me, because this is exactly what I help my clients with. I help you figure out what your thesis should be. We take our time and really strategically figure out what's the problem that you want to solve, what's your like sense of the solution and why is it a great solution? Why are you the right person to deliver that solution? Not necessarily just in one shot. You can take your time, experiment, gather data, make sure you're really solid on that thesis. And then, like I said, the work just begins. And then we start the process of you take action. You make doable plans, you take action towards making that thesis happen. And every single week, we talk about it, and you have the structure and the discipline of not making changes to your thesis unless you've been thoughtful about it. Not making changes with too few data points. And in those early phases, just sticking true to like, you know what, let me reinforce my thesis and let me do the problem solving to figure out how I need to actually make this a success. Because in this situation, you've done the thinking on the thesis. You've already decided that it's the right direction to move. You've already decided it is possible for this to succeed. And now you just have to stick with it long enough to figure out the how. Because that's usually the thing you don't know up front is like, what's the how? But you know that it's possible. And you just have to keep going, keep iterating, keep trying different things until you figure out the how. And what I recommend for people, you don't always have to do this. What I recommend for people is that once you've developed your thesis, choose a success milestone that you are going to achieve. And until you hit it, you're not allowed to change the thesis. So I did this for coaching. I set my offer and I was like, until I get $100,000 in revenue, I'm not changing my offer. You could also, if you're starting a new venture, you could say, okay, here's my new venture. Until I get 50 customers, I'm not changing the idea behind this venture. Or if you're recruiting for jobs, you could say, here's the thesis. I think there's a really strong thesis. Until I have a job offer in hand, I am not gonna change my thesis. You don't have to do this. I find it to be really clarifying and helpful to pre-decide the success milestone and then go until that point. That's totally optional. But I think the major thing to do is really make sure you've gotten enough data points. And your brain is going to be really tempted to change the thesis on too few data points. And so at the very least, to keep going, you could even say, until I get 100 rejections, I'm not going to stop. Until I have 50 people say no to me, I'm not going to stop. And you can also say, I need to have a certain number of robust dings, robust no's, robust sort of obstacles that I keep running into. And once I cross that threshold, then I'll change my thesis and not before. And it's easy to talk about in theory. When it's you and your career, your recruiting process, or your venture, it can be really hard to actually stick to this because it's scary. It's scary to get rejected. It's scary to get dings. You're going to be really tempted to change the thesis earlier than you said you would, which is why if you suspect that that's going to be you, I totally recommend hire a coach. Give yourself that structure and give yourself the discipline of, I'm going to be thoughtful about this and I'm really going to actually analyze how many data points have I actually gotten, and is it time for me to change the thesis, or is it time for me to, should I just keep on problem solving? It's not time for me to change it yet. And you will have a thought partner and the space and the structure to really sit and think that through so that you can feel really good about the career decisions you're making. And you can feel assured, I was thoughtful about this. I was strategic about this. I didn't make off the cuff emotional decisions. I made the best possible decisions that I could have. It's exactly what I help my clients do. And if that's what you want to do, come talk to me and book a free coaching consult at the link above.